so we have an historical record that says if we will apply these principles, we can go back to that. And America can easily do that if we would simply go back to that original foundation. So that's what I'm encouraging. The Constitution's not flawed. We don't need to change it. We just need to apply it.
Okay. And I want you to read the oath in a minute, but in all the homes in America, how many homes, what percentage would you say has a copy of the Constitution and Declaration of Independence?
Oh, my goodness. If you looked, my concern is that they may be in the home. It's kind of like having scriptures in your home.
Well, let's start there first. How many are in the home? I know a lot of homes that don't have it.
Well, that's probably true. There are probably a lot of homes that do not have scriptures in them or the Constitution. And that's a pretty hopeless condition almost. We need to return to those things. But if you have scriptures, let's say, in your home, and you never read them, what value are they to you? And the same could be said of the Constitution or our founding documents.
Why don't we get a pocket-sized Constitution in the mail every once in a while? I've never in my life received in the mail it costs 30 cents on the internet. Why doesn't that come to us in the mail once in a while? Why aren't there some groups doing that? Where would you support that kind of activity?
Well, I certainly support every American having constitutions, and not only that, not only having them, but reading them. That's what's really important. But whether we need to get it in the mail, I mean, like you say, it's available on the internet. I mean, you could just go there and find the Constitution and click on it and print it out, and you could have it in minutes.
But even before the internet, we never seem to get it from any source.
Well, it is interesting that
I guess my point is, why hasn't it been emphasized? It seems to be more emphasized now than ever before. Why over the past 20, 30, 40, 50 years has it just sort of been lost?
Okay, I see where you're going now. See, this document is so powerful. It's so wonderful. It has such a restorative capability that could it be possible that people might not even want us to know that it's there? Could it be that there's an effort to subvert it and say, by golly, if these Americans knew what they had, we might actually be booted out of office? And so I don't think it's by happenstance that we have had this subverted. You look at what happens in schools. Oftentimes, the review of the Constitution is kind of a happenstantial kind of thing. It just kind of bumps around, and then it's not even there anymore. I mean, there's no real discussion, review, and if it is, it's the living Constitution. It's not the Americanist principles that the nation was founded on. So yes, we do need to go back to that, and certainly that's my purpose, is to help encourage that also. And so Americans need to go back and review that again.
Great. Well, two of the purposes for this video, the reason I'm doing this is, one is I want people to hear what the candidates know and how they feel about the oath, and I want the people who watch this video to know that there is an oath, and not just with the candidates and not with just our representatives, but we have an oath as well. We have a birthright and obligation to support, defend, protect, and of course to understand it, because if we don't understand it, we can't do those things. So it'd be great right now, maybe you could share with us what the oath is. Should you become our next U.S. Senator, what is the oath? Maybe you could read it to us or something.
Well, I'd be very pleased to do that. This was enacted in 1884, and it's on U.S. code as well as in the rules of the Senate. I mean, this is not some dusty thing that nobody should ever think about. And this is something that's required in the Constitution. Article 6, as I said, requires all who hold office to go forward to support the United States Constitution. And this is what they put into code, okay? I, Scott Bradley, solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties of the office on which I am about to enter, so help me God. It says it right in the oath, so help me God. This is not something that you just kind of threw in there as a happenstantial afterthought. And I believe that once we do that, this nation again can, if we begin to apply the principles again, it's presupposed upon that, but we can again, just like in the late 1700s and early 1800s, become the greatest, freest, strongest, most happy, and most prosperous, and most respected nation on the earth. We know it can happen, and that's my intention.
That sounds great. I think your campaign is more than just a campaign for office. I think it's a campaign to help people. It's a public awareness campaign, I would say, and it's great. And I'm excited to study and hear about it, and it's exciting to see someone doing something like you.
Well, it's even more than that. It's a passion. And I think if it became a passion to Americans, Americans would again recognize the greatness of this nation. And our intent is not to just be a single vote in the Senate. Doing, out of 100 senators, one voting right, that's not going to make much difference. But if we can take a leadership position, and I believe there will be a lot of new faces this year in the Senate. I mean, we're watching and seeing how incumbents are being booted right and left, and I just applaud that. But there will be new faces, and they will want and need and desperately need, in fact, leadership. And our hope is to be able to provide that kind of leadership in the Senate and for the Washington, D.C. itself, and even beyond that. We have the technology now, perhaps through this video that you're doing, to be able to help make these principles popular again around the whole nation. And so, say somebody in Indiana comes across this, well, their senator ought to be made aware of this, and their senator ought to be one that comes and builds a coalition with us to restore the nation to its original foundation. So we hope to be able to take not only a leadership position within the Washington, D.C. cadre, if you will, but also entirely nationwide. And in the process, though, we hope to do some really wonderful things for particularly the western states, our energy, addressing issues such as healthcare. I mean, all of these things can be done very properly, very constitutionally, without government mandate, without taxpayer dollars, using that great Americanist principle, choice and accountability.
Right. Yeah, if we can get that Federal Reserve money back, we'd be much further ahead, wouldn't we? Now, I'm sure you've been in meetings and you've heard people say, I am so sick and tired of politics. It's like, well, I think maybe a lot of people are, but who's sick and tired of freedom? I don't think anyone can get sick and tired of freedom, and that's what this is about, I think.
No, politics has become a dirty word in the United States. And this is not about the political process. It's about principles. It's about restoring that which made this nation what it was and can be again. So no, the politics, people need to set that aside. We need to press forward with all of the right things, and there'll be something almost magical. It'll be divine, at least.
If all of our representatives had kept their oath since the beginning of this great country, where would we be today financially? What would the prosperity be like? What would the what would the poverty situation be like in your mind? What would America look like?
Well, of course, what crystal ball can we look into for sure, but it's my personal opinion that had we not had the government as such a drag on the economy, a drag on the people, a drag on our prosperity, this nation would have reached heights. Already, we're as we've said before, we'd been the most prosperous nation on earth. We're now the greatest debtor nation there is on earth. But the fact of the matter is that I do not believe that we could even begin to measure on today's scale the prosperity, the happiness, the peace, all of those things. It truly would have been a divinely blessed nation in every way, shape, and form had we kept the principles correct.
Okay. It seems to me that socialism, spreading the wealth, is putting a fire out with gasoline, muzzling the ox. And I thought everyone understood the muzzling the ox theory, but it seems like a lot of people don't. And it's like you said, I think, where they want to take and they don't care where it's coming from, even if it's going to hurt the future producers that they would want to take from down the road. It just seems kind of crazy. Getting back to the oath. You take the oath, but you subscribe the oath too. Is it the law to subscribe the oath? And could you explain what that is?
Sign the oath, you mean? Yeah. I'm not sure if they do or not. I have not looked into that, but I do know that we have to take the oath and raise our arm to the square. Now, you might have noticed when Mr. Obama took the oath of office in public, it was botched terribly by the Chief Justice as well as himself. You may go back and look at that.
Isn't that a telltale sign?
Well, it seems almost Freudian, doesn't it? I mean, it was like, what were they thinking? We're told that he took it privately, correctly, but there is no affirmation of that. There was no photographs taken or anything like that. Now, that may be neither here nor there because of all the other challenges that we currently have in our nation. But the fact of the matter is, I don't believe there's any record that he signed onto it, but I do believe that they've told us that he actually took the oath properly. And senators and congressmen usually take the oath, and I don't know of any instance where they have actually got something that's shown as a document that they did that.
Is it the law to? I know here in Provo, my father told me that he called the city council and said, you people haven't subscribed your oath, and then you're supposed to file it, and they hadn't, and they sent him a copy of the signed oath and proof that they had filed it within 90 days or something. I think was the law here in Utah. I wonder if there's something like that in Washington that's completely being ignored and not aware. What do you think?
Well, that bears certainly looking into, and now that you've brought it up, I certainly desire to do further investigation on that, and certainly Were we to subscribe our oath, I would not hesitate for an instant to subscribe that oath. That oath is an honorable oath that I think ought to be upheld.
I think above and beyond everything else, I think most people in this country want to see honesty, integrity in Washington, D.C. They want to know that they're being represented by an honest person. And I think getting right back to the oath, if people are taking oaths that they don't know, they haven't read, they don't understand, I think that's an obvious sign that they're not honest. And I think as people, and that's what I want to do, I want to go to Washington, D.C., and I want to interview as many representatives as I can and show the public how these people feel about their oath. And I think at one time the oath used to be called the test oath, or the ironclad test oath. I'm sure you know that, because in a way it was exposing one's integrity. And there were many politicians that once they had been elected, they refused to take the oath once they saw how detailed it was and how revealing and transparent it made the candidates. So I'm hoping to do that. But I think there's something magical. I shouldn't say magical, but there's something very spiritual about the oath. Taking it reveals and shows people what the intent is.
Well, it's a very powerful thing if it's used properly, and they've been ignoring it, as we've pointed out so often in this interview. But there's an interesting thing, a couple of thoughts I had when you were talking there. One is that there's a great story in Alexis de Tocqueville's book that he wrote about America. He wrote it, it was the first quarter century of the 1800s, and it was like, whoa, Europe's looking at America. Where did this country come from? Well, it came out of nowhere. It was a dusty backwater country, and now it's a power in the nations of the world. Wow. So he came over here. Tocqueville came on the streets, in the farms, in the factories, in the courts, in the government buildings, in the churches, and he saw America from the streets and from the first-hand view. One of the things he documents is that he went into a court in New York, and there was an individual that was a self-professed atheist that wanted to testify in regards to an issue that was before the court. The court denied him that privilege because they said, you've already said you're an atheist. You don't think there's any judgment that you'll ultimately come to on the other side before the ultimate judge, if you will. So if you deceive us, we won't ever know. And in your mind,